Welcome to Walking Stuff and Dead Things. I'm Bert.
I'm Spaz.
And we're fucking lazy.
We haven't done this in a fucking while.
Yeah, it has been a while.
First show on the new channel, but I gotta say that people on my channel actually were asking me, like, during wrestling Q&As, like, where the fuck is the mid-season finale of Walking Stuff and Dead Things? Beth died, and here we are.
Yep.
That's basically it.
Yep. Dawn popped one off.
Yeah, and then she got popped right away, which wasted an entirely other potential storyline.
Yep.
I want to say something before we get... Maybe, in theory. I want to say something before we get on to anything that happened this week. This entire season so far, the theme has been potential awesome storylines that died in an episode. Terminus, the war on Terminus, could have been a season. Mm-hmm. Discovering of the church, Father Gabriel going into town, all that sort of stuff. The survivors from Terminus.
Oh, preach, brother, preach.
Really? The discovery, or Beth escaping the hospital. I'm not going to remember names because we're tired in here. But Beth leaving the hospital could have been a season. Or if they were going to off Beth, they could have escaped, taken Beth with them, had a nice burial, whatever, and then the whole next season could have been the war on Slav City. But they screwed that up. I mean, I get, in the moment, we saw, right before she died, we saw the great relationship develop between Beth and Daryl. So, Daryl being Daryl, and Daryl being as close to Beth as he was, immediately, the instant response is gray matter wallpaper for that bitch. And I get that. And that suits Daryl's character, which is incredibly fine with me. Mm-hmm. But another story. In this first half of this season, we have 5 potential storylines that could have lasted a season. And they just threw them away. Mostly the war on Terminus and the war on the hospital could have been complete storylines.
I think they're rushing it. When it comes down to what storylines they have had and to what they're doing now, they're rushing it.
Yeah, and I think they're doing things to pop our interest for one episode, like killing people.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of keeping us interested rather than building anything. Like, there needs to be a next...
Yeah.
There needs to be a next obstacle. There needs to be a next long-term obstacle. There needs to be a next, okay, here's our next home base. They had the home base outside Atlanta. They had the prison. They had the church for a little while, which could have been another thing. Mm-hmm. Which could have been another thing, even with Father Gabriel and his weirdness and pulling up the floors because he's special. And, you know, apparently church floorboards are soft. Like cheese. But in all seriousness, like, so many missed opportunities. And I know we're going to get into this in this past week's episode, the mid-season premiere. That city, or that town, that upper crust rich development or whatever that Noah came from, yeah, it had been overrun by walkers, and you could see that clearly there had been a conflict between a couple groups of people in that time. But those people have moved on. Most of those walkers have moved on, except for the one that was hungry in Noah's room, which we'll get to in a second. But, like, there wasn't a lot of walkers there, and the ones that were there were only about half there. If you remember all the half bodies and the torsos, and all that stuff. They could have, like, and I don't necessarily want to repeat history and have them, like, magically create another Woodbury. But they could have had another safe haven, because the one thing I did like, and apparently if you watched Talking Dead, which I know we didn't together, but I caught a little bit of it, that whole scene, except for the boarded up gateway, was a legit, not abandoned, but an evacuated real neighborhood. Huh. Other than the mock-up of Noah's room, which was a soundstage to keep all the returning stars a secret and all that sort of thing. But it was a legit thing. Like, they wouldn't have had to build anything. They could have just done, okay, here's these iron gates that already are there. And, most rich, snobby type areas that have the gates on them usually have some sort of stylized spikes on top. Like, the arsenal and the defense is already there.
Yeah.
They could have built so easily on that. I mean, yes, there's the emotional attachment of what happened when they got there. There's the emotional attachment of, hey, this is Noah's old house. Hey, look, there's what's left of Noah's mom. But, you know, we tear down that house, we make it the city hall or something like that, and we get over it quickly. Because, as Rick mentioned in the episode, them getting to that city was important to Beth. So they did it for Beth. And then they decided pretty quickly, fuck this.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got?
I'm basically agreeing with everything you were saying.
Good job.
Like, we're on the exact same page.
We killed Tyrese, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I like Tyrese.
It's funny because he's one of those non-main character, vital characters.
Yeah.
Because as far as, like, if you take a hierarchy of who's important on the show, he's not up there with Daryl and Rick and Carl and all them. But he's in the background, but he's that very dependable, necessary part of the background.
Yeah.
He's not the flashy show house, but he is the foundation, if I want to be corny and metaphorical there for a second.
It's to be there.
We carry on the tradition of, if you babysit Judith, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
And if you become the moral compass of the group, you're gonna have a bad time.
You risk your life.
You risk your life. But no, it's absolutely true. Unfortunately, if they had done a little bit more, or if they had dragged it out a little more from the loss of Beth, who, I'm sorry, with all due respect, was much higher on that character scale. Like, we're reeling from that.
Yeah.
And it's like, we killed Beth and Tyrese for reasons. But if they had dragged that out a little bit, if they had done a little bit more to build up his character, I think it would have done a lot more. Because up until maybe the last sort of season and a bit, I would have said the same things about Beth. Beth, other than the fact that she was Maggie's little sister, and Maggie was a main character, Beth was kind of in the background. She had her thing when they were still on the farm, when she was considering suicide, and she was in focus for a little bit. Yeah. But other than that, she wasn't really a main thing. And then when they all separated out after the prison, she had a couple episodes, her and Daryl, which were some of the best episodes they were doing at the time.
At the time, I would agree with that.
And then she finally got her own little branch off in the story with her meeting Noah, but sort of being in prison / dealing with everybody from Slab City. And we were just starting to get to know Beth, and because of how she related to the main characters, she sort of became one of those main top of the tier characters, kind of by proxy.
Yeah.
If I'm making sense on that one, Tyrese didn't have that, because Tyrese's connection was to other people that were at that same importance.
Yeah.
So I don't think storyline wise they did him much favor there, but Beth sort of had a stepping stone to become a main character right before she died. If they had held this off just a little bit, I think they could have put Tyrese into that spot, because as much as we've said that Tyrese became the new moral compass of the show, and we've seen that torch be passed. Mm-hmm. It was Dale for a while, and that was powerful when he died.
Yeah.
Like, especially if you consider where they were at the time. They were still on the farm, and he had given that great speech to the whole group, trying to get them to maintain their humanity so they wouldn't kill that kid with the fucked up knee.
Yeah.
And he's trying. He basically gives them
plenty of times before that.
Oh yeah, but I'm saying, like, he died right after this last final monologue, which was fantastic. And here's this guy who's like the one guy trying to maintain the humanity of the group, and then he dies, and that packed a punch.
Yep.
And then, not in the same way, but in sort of like that grandfatherly role, you had Herschel, which was good for a number of reasons. Herschel gave them a home. Herschel, resisted them for so long and finally embraced them. Herschel was family to half the group. Herschel had a really big impact on Glenn and the whole Glenn and Maggie scenario going forward. Herschel worked well with Rick and was Rick's he was at Rick's side, I would say, at some points as much as Daryl.
Yeah.
And we got invested in him. And when he died, it was a lot. You knew it was coming more because he had lost his leg. And you know, realistically speaking, in an apocalyptic setting, somebody with a bad leg isn't going to last very long.
No, they're going to be kind of lowest on the totem pole. So
it's true, but even when he lost his leg, he showed that he was a fucking badass.
Yeah.
He still held up his own in the prison. When Rick lost his mind, he was the one that wandered out and found him. He even says to the point of, it's a heck of a hike out here on one leg. I hope whatever you're doing out here is worth it. Like, he was the one that had the most to complain about. He was the one that kept it light. He was the one that kept everybody sort of on course and was sort of that moral
keeping them
backbone.
focused.
Yeah, he served a lot of purposes, and helped to care for Judith, who is also a thing. So that was it. So when Tyrese kind of became the nice guy, the moral compass, the trying to struggle and hang on to humanity, when he became that guy, he didn't really have much to build that character on, or for us to gravitate to. The only real story that he had for us to react to, and when we reacted to it, it was more so of like a what the fuck, was how quickly he forgave Carol, and the fact that he played a big role in getting Judith back to Rick.
Yeah.
But once Judith was back to Rick, that purpose goes out the window. And once it's no longer a case of, hey, I have to work directly with Carol to protect these girls, and now it's just, okay, Carol's back, she's part of the group, and I'm just part of the group, and he sort of fades into the background again. My wrestling fan friends will appreciate this. He wasn't the cool guy in the faction, he was Diesel standing in the back looking tough.
With a hammer.
With a hammer, yeah. Well, the hammer was a thing, but it's just, there was so much unrealized potential in that character that... Well, I don't know if you'll get what I mean. There's so much potential in that character that I wish I was more upset by the death than I was.
Yeah. Like, I like the way when he was in the process of dying and he was bleeding out, and before they found him and he lost his arm, he was going through hallucinations because of the blood loss and everything that's going on with his body and the changes, that he's seeing the governor, he's seeing Bob, he's seeing the kid that
Mika and the other one, yeah. Look at the flowers, girl.
Well, they were there, but I mean the kid that was had his hand around Judas.
Right, yeah, the one that was like friends with Gareth.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name either. But then you had the girls there, you had Beth there. Having Beth there, while I know it was important and impactful because the crowd just got over losing her,
well,
it's too soon after losing her, though.
Yeah, well, the reason they did it is because every character that was appearing in that hallucination were all the characters that we've seen, and all the main characters that have died, that whether they've been good or bad, they've had an impact on where he is now.
And see,
the choices that he's making in his final moments, like he even said when he sat there, and he was arguing with the hallucination of the kid who was the friend of Gareth.
Yeah.
And he said, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. I follow that, and I agree with you 100%, except for Beth. Because here's the deal, as you say, like all
Beth
of them
didn't really have as much
tied to him.
Impact to him.
Like as far as people that he's going to hallucinate, of course he's going to hallucinate the governor, because he almost became one of the brainwashed governor guys in Woodbury. Of course he's going to hallucinate Gareth's friend because he had the standoff with Gareth defending Judith. Mm-hmm. Of course he's going to hallucinate Bob because Bob was so close to his sister and he helped end it at the end when it was Bob's time.
Yeah.
Of course he's going to the two girls, Mika and I can't remember the other one's name. Of course he's going to hallucinate them because he and Carol spent so much time taking care of those girls before they had to go look at the flowers. There was no, or at least not that I can see personally, I'll put it that way, there was no direct reason why he would hallucinate Beth.
I think it was just as a last second impact because it just happened to him. It was a great moment of sorrow from the episode, and to the group, so he kind of relates to it. He's still kind of mourning it.
Yeah.
So at the time, it's just like, his mind's probably just saying, you know what, this is a close friend of yours. Imagine them giving you comforting words, saying that it's going to be okay. But
you know what it felt like to me, honestly?
Stuck.
And I did like the hallucination scenes. I thought they were really well done.
Oh, fantastic.
But putting Beth in there, it kind of seemed like the writers were going along the same thought pattern that we had, where Tyrese's death isn't going to be quite as impactful. So putting Beth in there is like, hey, the world sucks and Tyrese is going to die. And remember, you're still sad that Beth died too. Like, there's a little bit of that kind of... I don't want to say that because that kind of makes me sound like a dick.
No, but actually, you make a very good point, because Beth just died and it was so impactful. Everybody doesn't want to be like, oh, well, okay, sorry, Beth, that you died, but Tyrese...
Because nobody's going to do that.
Exactly.
Like, realistically
exactly
speaking.
What it's gonna, that's exactly
even if you take out...
That's why they brought her, so it was just like, okay, it was just like Tyrese, and, oh yeah, Beth... So
they're together, and, like, the whole... Here's the thing, as far as...
The group's meeting up every single time. Just whether or not they're alive when they meet up.
Yeah. I don't, and see, there's something I want to get to in a second, but I lost my train of thought. Okay, there's two production things I want to say about this week's show.
Okay.
On the one hand, I loved the hallucination scenes. I thought they were very well done. I thought they were not overly corny. I thought they represented his sort of internal struggle in his last moments very, very well. What I didn't like was all the cuts in the episode, where it was like they would show you a random flash of something and another random flash of something, and by the end of the episode, you know what all those flashes were.
Yeah.
And I can see what they were trying to do, because occasionally you'll get a show where they bring you in at the end, and then they flash back, and then they bring you everything.
And say, this is what happened to get us here.
Yeah, they bring you in the middle of a fight, for say, and then the rest of the whole episode is like how we got to that fight.
Yeah.
And that kind of style can work. I don't always like it, but I see.
This.
But this wasn't even that. This was just choppy shit. And for them to go right after Beth died, and you assume that what we see in the opening with the digging and Maggie crying and all that is them burying Beth, which is a little bit of closure for the audience as well.
Yeah.
Is actually them burying Tyrese, and we didn't bother showing you them mourning Beth.
Yeah.
Which, it's kind of a bird. Like, I know it's not intentional. I know they're trying to it's the first episode of the second half of the season. They're trying to do it with a little bit of flair. They're trying to make the episode stand out, because it is important as well.
It's very abstract the way they did it.
It's very abstract, and if you're doing an abstract thing with purpose, it's good. But if you're being abstract for the sake of being abstract, or if you're being abstract and it falls on its face like it did this time. As I say, as a whole, when they do theories like that and do particular little twists in how the production is done to make the episode stand out, you run the risk of it failing.
Yeah.
And I think they had a lot of good ideas going into this. I just think it was pulled off shit. But the other half of that being the hallucination scenes that were done really, really well, and it really was the Tyrese episode.
It was.
Which that part of it was done well, but I think you could have done without the cuts, because the cuts were like little 2-3 second things that didn't, other than the shots of what we thought was Beth and ended up being Tyrese.
Yeah.
Which, that held some.
It was hard to focus on the episode as a whole.
Yeah. It's. Yeah. I don't want to I'm going to compare it to Nickelback. Nickelback is the only band I can think of where I love half of their songs and I hate half of their songs, and there's not much in between.
Yeah.
There were things about this show that I loved, that I thought were done really well, and there's things that I hated that fell on their face, and there wasn't very much in between.
Where do you think we're going from this point?
They got to find another... They got to get situated. They got to... And I'm not saying do this quickly, but I'm saying... By the end of this season, I want to know what the next major conflict is.
I think they're going to go to Washington.
Okay. I'm not literally talking about...
Because they did have... this is what I'm trying to figure out, is where they're going from this point. Now that...
Like, physically where they're going.
Physically where they're going. Because They went to Slab City. Slab City didn't turn around.
I don't know why.
Said, I have this.
After they shot that woman, here's what doesn't make sense to me. You want to find something with structure. You want to find something, hopefully, that is already an existing structure that you can just build on rather than starting from scratch.
Yeah. This already exists.
Once they got rid of,
was already eliminated, and the person who was bad, making this place bad, is gone. So now this place is kind of alright because the people are just like, whoa, whatever fucking happened, happened. We're done with it.
They should be human.
We have an entire city.
They should be human hermit crabs. Really, like realistically, after the battle with Woodbury, there's no conceivable reason why they couldn't have rebuilt the prison or rebuilt Woodbury.
The prison, I see a little bit more of a challenge just because it's a prison. It's a little bit more, for lack of better terms, concrete.
Yeah, even if you wanted to wall off the damaged parts and like live in the parts that weren't damaged, that was a huge building.
Yeah.
Like especially when you see Talking Dead and you see the whole landscape of where that building was, it was huge. Like there's nothing to say. Like that battle basically happened on one corner by the one turret there. They could have just walled off that section and had the entire rest of the building to themselves. They could have very easily, because not much of the fighting happened in Woodbury, they could have very easily reinforced Woodbury. They could have very easily, especially when they shot the main chick, they could have amalgamated with the people at Slab City like they did with the people from Woodbury and lived in that hospital, built up that hospital, built up and slowly sort of expanded out and rebuilt the city. But they didn't. They moved on to that complex where Noah and his family used to live. Yeah, and like I say, again, emotional attachment kind of sucks. He could have a whole mental breakdown about being in the house where his family died. That could have been a whole other story. But they pissed that away. And now they're going to Washington, despite the fact that Eugene...
Are they going to Washington, though?
That's what I think.
That's what I think they should.
That's what all indications are saying at the moment. But now they're going to Washington, based on the fact that Eugene, while he was coming up with a bullshit story, thought that Washington made sense.
Yep.
Here's the next thing that I want to say. There's another whole.
That's another level of genius right there.
I talk about Walking Dead with my boss at work sometimes, and this is what we actually talked about today. Eugene, he said something to the effect of, even though Eugene was full of shit, there was logic in what he said. So sure, why not check out DC? Because it's logical, because there's lots of government infrastructure and all that sort of thing, right? Mm-hmm. But at this point, I'll ask you, how long do you think it's been now? About 5 years or so? Maybe 3, 4?
Carl looked about...
I love how Carl's the measuring stick.
Carl is literally the measuring stick. He looked probably about maybe 8.
In the beginning. And now he looks like he's about 15. So we could say on the high side, maybe 6 years, 7 years. Now, here's where my problem lies with that.
In 6 to 7 years, if there was such a infrastructure like Washington still existing, don't you think in that 7 years something may have happened where they've come across other people who know about something like that?
The other side of that is too, even if there is infrastructure there, logic. Like, people are brilliant, and people are brilliant in different ways. But people, as a whole, like human beings, think the same way. If you think, okay, I live in a small town, there's only one convenience store, the apocalypse is coming, I'm going to go to the convenience store, because that makes sense, there's food there. If you wait 7 years, going to that thing that makes sense doesn't anymore.
Yeah.
Because those amenities are gone. Even if Eugene was right, and Washington makes sense, and there's infrastructure, and there's things set in place there, and all that sort of thing, even if that logic was true at the time, it's probably not there now, because all those things that make sense are all the things that people are going to check first. So, so if I'm looking at my options for places to go, I'm going to go, and this, people might laugh at me if you want. I'm gonna make a list of what makes the absolute most sense to what makes the least sense. My first target is going to be the one that makes the least sense, because that's where nobody's been, and that's where your chances of resources are.
See, that's why in my little zombie apocalypse contingency plan, I plan on hitting up distribution centers, warehouses.
Because those make sense, but those would also be hit first.
people would be hitting up grocery stores, Walmart, Zellers, Costco, everything else like that. Nobody is going to be hitting up. Well, I'll just shut up. Nobody's going to
See, now everybody's gonna be hitting this.
Now
we're all picking
sense.
birds. See, we have a common friend in Toronto that works at a frozen food storage for Metro in Toronto. I'll just give her a buzz while the phones are still working, and she'll hook us up with some.
Not to mention, I know.
Apparently, they have a lot of turkeys. Put them.
There's a lot of sleep. Sleep through most of the apocalypse.
We get the itis.
Get the itis. No,
Give the turkey to the zombies and slow down the turkeys.
Slow down the turkeys?
Slow down the zombies. Fuck off. It's tired in here. Who's gonna die next? I've got my theory. You and me and your lovely lady who's over there and far off camera. We're having this debate earlier. Who do you think's gonna die next?
Who do I think's gonna die next?
Not who do you want to die next. Who's going to die next? Do you think?
Logically, the person I think will die next is after these commercials.
Tune in next week. No.
I want to say Sasha.
Are you saying based on who's the most expendable character-wise?
A little.
See, I would say Sasha if Tyrese was still with us, because Sasha dying would make Tyrese go nuts, and there would be a story there. But who? And again, I'm going to sound like a cold asshole here, but who's left in the group that's severely connected to her? Like I don't think it would have any. I don't think it would have any punch at this point.
No.
I think it would be one of those, another one bites the dust.
And Michonne,
No, man.
I don't think she's going to be the one to die. She has too much built on this.
Is it bad that I kind of want Rick to die? He's not going to, but
no, he's not going
like when Carl's a couple years older and they want to make him the focal point, because we've seen the directors interviewed before when they talk about Rick as the main character, and they've corrected Hardwick because Hardwick's an idiot, but a bunch of times like, this is not Rick's story, this is Carl's story. Like it's been said multiple times. So there's going to be that passing of the torch in one way or another someday.
Yeah.
And people don't agree with me, but I say the story goes right now, the person that has lost the most people close to them is Maggie. So I don't want to say it. I'm still going with what I've said for a couple seasons now. The next one to die is going to be Glenn. Because Maggie going crazy, can you imagine, because friggin' Lauren Cohen is a fantastic actress. Other than being an absolute smoke show, she's a fantastic actress. Dem titties. Anyway, all the ass. And she kind of looks soft.
Like Brie.
Brie, for those of you that are wrestling fans. You saw what he did there. He's not even a wrestling fan. But, yeah, Glenn. Now, can you imagine...
Brie is a cheese.
Brie is also a mediocre female.
I know who it is. I was making the double.
I know your girlfriend watches Total Divas. Do we want to go there? Hang your head. Do it. Attaboy. Now... What I was saying, we talked about like the hierarchy of importance of characters and all that. What is the psychological impact on Maggie losing Beth and Glenn back to back?
And her father.
And her father's been gone for a while now. But I'm saying like if they decided that there was they shouldn't put that out there. But if they decided somebody else needs to die next week, and it's Glenn. The story writing possibilities of the impact of her losing Beth and Glenn.
She's gonna go nuts.
I could see her taking out Rick, and she's the new leader of the group for reasons. Big freaking titty master showdown between Michonne and Maggie. Again, one more wrestling match, and then one more wrestling reference, and then I'm going to cut that for the day. Gown match.
I will order pay-per-view for that.
Lauren Cohen is the Walking Dead Divas champion.
World.
For reasons. Okay, this is how tired we are.
I'm pretty sure this was on the sneak peek on Talking Dead. Do we want to talk about that?
You gotta give me more. I'm tired.
From a friend.
You mean the crazy black guy?
Morgan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Water bottles.
Water bottles?
In the preview.
I didn't.
They seen a sign that said from a friend, and it was a whole bunch of water bottles and stuff, and they're like, well, how do we know it's not poison? And Eugene's just like, collateral insurance. Went to go take one, and Abraham's just like, fucking, I'm just stupid.
That's your Abraham impression? I'm just like, I'm not even talking, I don't even think I saw the preview. I'm just watching you do whatever that was.
Anyways, that's not going in the episode. Unless I get lazy.
Laziness is awesome. Don't edit it too much.
No.
These people are used to us kind of clusterfucking around. That's what they come for. Sometimes twice.
Clusterfucking.
They come for clusterfucking. Alright, Morgan's got to join the group eventually. Morgan assassinates Rick.
He's like
that far. Okay. Something else I want to say, and this is something I was thinking about for the past couple of days. You've heard that the expression, you know, the early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese.
Yeah.
Morgan is the second mouse.
Yeah.
Because Morgan has been everywhere that they've been, all the way along, like right behind them, and because they've had all the shit happen to them, he doesn't have to deal with any of it. So he's just kind of trailing along.
Will be represented as the shit storm. Okay, we got the shit storm here.
What are you? I don't even know what you're doing.
Okay? This is Rick and the group. Okay? This one is Morgan. They will get to this.
Any shitstorm.
Any shitstorm. And Morgan's like, ah! Tired.
That was a whole lot of that was a whole lot of build up, man, just for you to knock shit down on the desk. Okay, put it down in the box below. How many of you vote we should do every review this tired? Anyways, predictions for next week. Who steps up as the new moral compass? It was Dale, it was Herschel, it was Tyrese.
Still gonna be Glenn.
Still gonna be Glenn.
Glenn has been the one saying, oh, we can change. We can go back.
Yeah, but he lost it in this episode, though. Like, him and Rick were both talking about, like, hey, we let people go before and we wouldn't have done it now, or something along.
Yeah, I think Glenn's still gonna be like, you know what, fucking snap out of it. We gotta do this the right way.
I'm saying Michonne. Because Michonne, as much as she was a lone wolf when she came to the show, she's the one now getting in Rick's face saying, no, we have to find a safe spot. We have to hunker down and find a new home. Michonne is basically the one now saying, our flock needs to nest.
Yeah.
And that there's a logic to that before she would have just been like, fuck everybody, blades for all of you. And now, you know, we talked a lot last season about story arc and character arc and whatnot. That's where hers is at right now. She sees what they need to do for the betterment of the group, and I think they showed that a lot.
Yeah.
This week.
I think so too.
So she could be it, but then that means she'll die.
Yes.
Somebody's gonna use.
I think
somebody's gonna use her swords on her, and then she's gonna be a really tall, really badass Pez dispenser. Yep.
Exactly.
Ashes, we all fall down.
This channel needs to become as virusy as the zombie disease. This being a new channel, all feedback, suggestions, comments, even shit you want us to talk about, down there.